Hey, friend.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to my humble abode. Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Glaze. Welcome back. I am really excited today because I have actually not had someone physically do a podcast with me in person yet. And this is the first person that I'm having do this. So I'm really excited about this. So really quick, I am going to introduce my incredibly amazing and talented friend, Calla, right here. She is a singer, songwriter, artist, also living in Nashville. And the reason why I brought her on today is because, this whole podcast is about pursuing your dreams and going through the processes of pursuing your dreams. And all of us go through those processes. We all face challenges. We all face difficulties of our own. We all face obstacles and everything as we're pursuing our dreams. And this podcast really is about helping people navigate those journeys and those processes and those challenges to actually see your dreams become a reality, and to just have real conversations with other people on this podcast to show you like, hey, we're just two people who are also trying to pursue dreams of our own, and we're going through the same processes. We're going through a lot of the same things as far as navigating on that journey to see those dreams become a reality. We don't feel like we've arrived yet or made it yet. Like there are things that we're still trying to achieve and places we're trying to go and get to. So yeah, a lot of this is just sharing a lot of things that I feel like I've learned along the way or other people have learned along the way, lessons and things that we can share to help other people learn and get there as well, because we don't just want to win ourselves, like we want to help other people win. That's something I'm really passionate about is, okay, how can I help other people succeed as I succeed, And so that's a big reason why I started this podcast. And one thing that really came to my mind, which was a big reason why I wanted to have Calla on this episode, was to actually talk about, okay, when you're pursuing your dreams, when you're going after something, when you're in a specific industry, you need to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people. Because if you don't have the right people around you along the way, it can be really detrimental to your journey. We've seen that through so many massive artist stories. I love watching artist documentaries. I know
Same.
We've even watched them together.
I could watch those all day.
Yeah.
All day long.
I love watching them because in a lot of ways, I feel like it's so helpful to learn from the legends and the icons that went before us and okay, what did they do right? And what are some things maybe they didn't do right,
Exactly.
And one person that kind of comes to my mind when I think about surrounding yourself with the right people or the wrong people, I guess, is Whitney Houston was a massive successful artist. But, I have watched multiple movies, documentaries about her. And it's wild because I believe it was her brothers who introduced her to drugs, and her brothers, she brought them on the road with her and stuff. Yeah. And they were the ones who introduced her to drugs and stuff.
Always be the brothers.
And obviously drugs were detrimental to her.
Oh, completely.
So someone like that comes to my mind where it's wow, incredibly talented person and had everything going for her, but she had a lot of the wrong people around her. Even it seems like in a lot of ways when she ended up getting with Bobby, that was a really bad thing for her.
Exactly. That's what I know of.
Yeah, that was the
downfall.
Really bad for her. And so something I wanted to do with this episode was actually have Calla on and kind of talk about surrounding yourself with the right people, because we are two friends who met each other in the industry in a pretty cool way, which we'll get into that. But we both live in Nashville now. When we met, we lived in totally different places.
Yep.
And we're both pursuing very similar things in the same industry, which is music. And we've kind of been a soundboard for each other and have helped each other along the way. And so there's a lot of stuff I want to unpack with that and get into. But also, we just put out a song together called Against the Grain, which is really awesome. It's a driving rock type of song. You guys should check it out. And Calla is the one who is singing on the track as well. Sounds incredible.
Thank you.
So you guys should check it out. We'll talk about that as well later in this episode. But just go ahead and like tell everyone a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and kind of where you're at right now on your journey with music.
Okay. So my name is Calla. I'm from Houston, Texas, and obviously, like Kayla said, I now live in Nashville. I travel a lot, so she and I joke about this all the time, that like every time for a while when we try to hang out with each other, I'm like, I'm sorry I'm in Houston, I'm sorry I'm in New York, I'm sorry I'm gone.
I'm like, do you live here?
I'm like, I kind of do. I don't know if I even would technically say I live here. This is like home base for me sometimes. But yeah, so I am a singer-songwriter. I'm an artist. I do pop R&B music, and recently I've been getting into like more dance music vibes. I mean, it's basically summer now, and so I definitely wanted to do some upbeat music to lay out by the pool and whatnot.
That remix EP.
Yeah, and
fire.
do some remixes with some DJs.
Yeah.
I just did a music video in New York for my latest single, which was so much fun. So yeah, I just feel like I'm, an artist trying to break into the industry and make a name for myself and make a difference.
Yeah, you guys should definitely check out her music. She has a really cool kind of like 90s-ish sounding R&B vibe called Solo, which is really cool. And something I think is awesome about that song is she actually wrote it about the music industry which I didn't even know that at the time that I first heard it. She just put out a remix EP like super recently.
Yeah, that was March something, April something,
like a month
recently,
or two ago.
Yeah, within the last month and a half for sure.
Yeah, and it's really cool. It's like remixes from all different DJs of one of her songs, which is also a dope song, almost like a pop
disco pop,
like almost
vibe.
Dua Lipa vibe. It's
Yeah,
really cool.
Dua Lipa vibes. It's definitely like a disco pop song, but if you actually looked at the lyrics, it's called Self-Sabotage. Which sounds kind of like negative, but when you look at the lyrics, it's based off of the fact that I always sabotaged myself, whether it was, with my appearance or my actions or emotions or whatever it was. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it has a deeper meaning to it, but I wanted to create fun music for the summer. So I was like, do you know what? Let me mash the two together. And it worked really well.
It's cool too. Like I love hearing the actual meaning behind your songs, because I think like just first impression, your songs could just be taken about like a relationship or whatever, but then actually hearing like the deeper meaning behind them is really cool.
Yeah. You always gotta trickle that in there somehow.
It makes you like think about it differently. Like now when I listen to your songs, I'm like, oh dang, like I didn't even realize that, but it's cool hearing it from those perspectives now.
Yeah. I always felt like great music, it can affect you in one part of your life with, let's say you're going through a breakup, with your boyfriend or whatever. And then you listen to it 5 years later and it can affect you with your feelings with your family or, a big transition that you have in your life. So I feel like great music constantly changes with the meaning behind it.
Yeah.
So I always want to create something that is relatable and obviously something that I went through. Yeah. Because I feel like my life has been wild and I'm literally 22 years old, so I definitely want to write from those experiences.
Yeah, I love that. That's like something that I try to do in a lot of ways when I write too, is write in a way that's like, oh, people can relate to this, like it's easy to relate to, but then a lot of times there's like deeper meanings behind it,
yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
Really cool. I love that. And it's funny you say you're 22 because I just turned 32. So it's funny to me because it's like
there's no way
we're 10 years apart age-wise, but it doesn't feel like that because when we met each other, it was just like, when I met you, I felt like I had known you for like
so long.
A long time.
Same. It was one of those weird connections where you're like, I feel like I already know you.
Yeah. And usually when that happens, I'm like, I know this is like a setup from God. Like,
completely.
I know I'm going to know this person significantly in some way. And it's funny to me because I lived in Northern California. You were in Houston.
I was in Houston.
You were still in Houston.
I moved. Wait, no, I was still in Houston at that time.
Yeah,
because I came to Nashville in 2020.
After Costa Rica.
So I was still in Houston. I haven't lived by myself yet. I was still like fresh out of high school.
We met in Costa Rica at a music retreat that we both went to, which was kind of wild. That was the first time. I have traveled internationally before, but it's always been with like groups of people or teams for like missions trips or whatever.
Yeah.
That was the first time that I traveled internationally by myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to this music retreat. Like there's one person that I know of who's also going to this retreat that I met in LA, which was Sophia. She goes by Sozy for her artist name. But I was just like, literally knowing her is the only reason I feel like this is legit and I'm just going.
Exactly.
Because I was like, I don't know any of these other people. I don't know if this is a legit thing. We'll find out.
That's what's so scary with the industry is because you could get like emails or opportunities or, you know, people reaching out through social media saying like, hey, I have this great thing. And then you go look at this person and it's like, who are you? Like, you're not real. You're not a real person.
Especially too, because it was like, come to Costa Rica for
Which
this.
is scary.
And I'm like, okay,
like,
traveling internationally to a music retreat that I'm just hearing of for the first time where they're saying like Grammy nominated mentors are going to be there. Yeah. So it sounds really legit, but it's like
also kind of sounds too good to be true.
Yeah. I was like kind of nervous. It's funny. Even my friends, like when I left, because I flew to LA first and then I flew from LA with everyone else to Costa Rica. But when I left Reading, they were just like, bro, are you sure? Hope this is legit. And I was like, me too.
Yeah. Well, that's why my mom went with me. I mean, I was also 18 and she was like, absolutely not. You're not going by yourself. And being from Houston, that's like, we're used to seeing some sketchy things happen. Yeah. So she's like, oh no, I'm coming with you. Plus I think she wanted to go because it was like a free vacation for her, basically, like a free excuse to go.
I'm trying to go to Costa Rica.
She was laying out by the pool, then she would go to the beach and was just
I would have done the same
her
thing,
best
man.
life. Yeah, she honestly did that trip very well.
Yeah, she really was. That's so funny. So we both were in Costa Rica at this music retreat. I literally remember the night I met you. We all went like down the street to that little local bar. Yeah, like local restaurant or whatever. Yeah. And I just remember, I don't know, man. I remember being at this retreat and just being like, everyone thinks they're really cool and they're all like, they have their little groups of people and I was like, I'm just not that person. Yeah. Like I was just like, I think there was like one other person there I really connected with, which was Brittany Davis, because I had really connected with her before the trip online and stuff. But even still, I was just like, I kind of feel like I'm like a lone wolf out here with all these people. Like everyone is kind of like a pop artist and I'm like a rock artist.
You're like,
and I was just like, bro, I don't fit in here, but it's fine. And so we were at this little cabana place or whatever to get food and stuff. And everyone's like talking to their people and stuff. And I was just like, well, I'll just sit at this table. And then you sat across from me. And I remember, because I hadn't like met you before that night. No. And then I remember seeing you and I just remember thinking like, she's really cool. Like she's cooler than me. I don't know why she's wanting to talk to me.
You see, and so it's funny you had those feelings because honestly, like, I think it took a while for me whenever I first started doing music because I was in high school when I first started. I mean, I was still a senior, but I was in high school. So I was really new. Like that was the first year I ever started doing professional music. And I honestly, like my mom for the longest time, she would go to the studio sessions with me. She wouldn't go to like writes with me. Yeah. But she would go like watch me record, or if I had like a vocal lesson, like she would be there because she's the kind of mom that like loves to be there for her children. Yeah. But at the same time, I kind of would use that as like a safety net almost for me, to where like if I felt uncomfortable in a situation that I could always just go and kind of like gravitate towards my mom because I knew her. Yeah. Where, you know, like, especially when I first moved out here, like putting yourself, nobody talks about how hard it is to make friends when you're an adult. Nobody ever talks about that. It's not easy. Yeah. And so me being there, I remember I was there without my mom and I was like, God, okay, now I need to go introduce myself to people. And I'm not like a very antisocial person. Like I am very extroverted. Like I love talking to people, but I think it was just an intimidating situation. Yeah. And so I was sitting like across from you thinking, thank God she's a nice person. Cause I was just so stressed out being like, oh my God, I need to talk to somebody cause I'm sitting here by myself. And I was like, just having anxiety. And so I was like talking to you thinking, thank you, Jesus. She is a nice person who actually wants to talk to me. Yeah.
Well, it was funny because like, I don't know, like some of the people who were there, I felt like I got this vibe from people where it was almost like a standoffish vibe, you know?
Completely.
Yeah. Where I was just like, oh, I'm just trying to like
meet some people and have
like
fun.
Real conversations with people and whatever. And so then when you sat down, I was just like, oh, she's probably gonna be the same way, where it's gonna be this like standoff vibe, whatever. And but then you ended up being super genuine, and like we ended up having like a whole in-depth conversation about stuff.
We had like a heart-to-heart the first night that we met each other.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is like the most genuine person I've met here.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, I feel like I'm supposed to know this person. And so it's crazy to me because sometimes I think about that and I'm like, we met one time. Like we were in Costa Rica. We maybe hung out with each other for like a couple days.
Yeah.
And then we went back to like our separate states, but we stayed in touch through FaceTime and stuff so intentionally. And I'm like, that's pretty amazing that we did that.
Oh yeah. Because even now, like, I'm sure everybody can relate to this at some point or another that, you know, if you don't make the time and effort, especially like in your early 20s, like, whether you just graduated college or whatever it is, like if you don't stay in contact with people and really make an effort, like those friendships are going to die out.
Oh, it dwindles. Yeah. Completely. Especially long distance. It's like you have to really, because when you're super busy and you have a bunch of things going on, it's like you do have to like actually make an intentional effort to stay connected to people who don't live in the same town as you.
For sure.
You know, and so sometimes I look at that and I'm like, wow, I'm actually really proud of us that we stayed pretty intentional with each other, even though we had basically only hung out in person like a couple times
in a foreign country.
Like didn't know each other super well. Yeah. You know?
But do you know what? I think what really did it is that, I mean, I'm very strong in my faith as well as you. And so that we both kind of looked at that as like, oh, this was totally a God thing. Like, honestly, I think the whole reason why I got accepted, because I prayed before going on this trip because I was nervous if it was fake or not. Like, I prayed about like, God, please, you know, if this is your will and you're really wanting me to go, I pray that, you know, doors open. Yeah. And then immediately I got the email saying I was accepted to go. And then, you know, whenever I met you there, I really think that my purpose for going there was two things. One of them was for us to meet. Yeah. And then the other one was for me to realize how much I actually didn't know about the industry, like on the business side, because that really opened up my eyes a lot. Yeah. But, you know, you were the kind of person that I could, and still do, talk about that side of things with, because I felt so stupid sitting in those like sessions or those meetings, you know, whatever the conferences, being like, oh my God, he's talking so fast. I don't know what's happening.
Like mechanical royalties. And I was like, what the heck is a mechanical royalty?
See, and I didn't even know what a PRO was. So whenever they start breaking it down, like you need your PRO with BMI or ASCAP, I'm like, what are all of these words? I don't know what any of this means. Yeah. And then they started bringing numbers into it. And I was like,
they're like, you need to know your splits with your publishing and your what, and I was like, what?
Yeah, no, I
didn't know either.
My brain was
eye-opening,
turning off, and I like, it was one of those things where it's like so much information was overloading that I was like, already kind of feeling, you know, I did feel the standoffish vibes from some people, but then also like now being like, oh my God, I feel like an idiot. Like I don't know any of this. I've never even heard of these words. And it just kind of made me feel small, but whenever we would talk about things after, you would make me feel like level and be like, no, like, don't worry. Like, this is what this means. You know, you would have something like this. And I was, you know, with a company at that time that I didn't know anything about royalties or owning my own music, which is super important. Yeah. And so I was stressed out, you know, thinking like, oh my God, like, do I not own any of my own music? Like, how much money is that going to cost? Because that was just a big part in my life at that time. Yeah. So definitely us meeting was 1,000% a God thing. He was like, here you go, 2 people, talk.
Yeah. Which is wild because like with how young you were and not knowing those things, like even with me, I was 28 when I went to Costa Rica and I was still like, what? Like I like didn't even know just because of like the journey I had been on with music and different things. Like I went to ministry school in California, and then it was after that I felt like, oh, I'm supposed to like really dive into the music industry, into the business side and everything. And that was like the same time that happened, you know, and that's how I ended up in Costa Rica. And but yeah, same thing where I was just like, I don't know any of this stuff, which that's something I want to get into as well, is like when we met each other, we were kind of like in this space of like, I have no idea
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if I'm supposed to be doing this.
Exactly. And now to see where we both are now is
crazy.
Wild.
Oh my gosh.
But
I
remember, yeah, going back to, you were talking about just like your faith and stuff, because obviously that's a huge part of my life. But I remember even the first conversation we had, I don't think we talked about God at all. Like, but then we were back in my room that one night.
That's when we really got into the
that one
conversation.
Night, and you started it because you somehow... I don't know how we got into it, but then you were just like, guys, I don't know what you guys believe, but like, I believe in Jesus. And then I was like,
Jesus is the homie.
I was like, oh, this is my girl right here. We about to be friends.
Because you know what? And I think it's so sad, but I mean, even more now than at that time, that you kind of have to be like, look, this is what I believe in. I'm not saying that like what I believe in, you have to believe in. I'm not going to force those feelings on you. And like, you know, please be respectful of what I believe in, and I'll respect you for what it's a whole thing where you can't just be like so open about your feelings anymore. And I hate the fact that, you know, even sometimes now that I feel like I have to almost kind of like not shut that side off of me, but be very aware of my surroundings, because that is such a big thing in my life that I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm not saying that you have to believe in God, but I just don't want to be ridiculed.
I think what's
for
hard
something that I believe in
is it does feel like
there's such a stigma.
It feels like if I say like, oh, I believe in Jesus, or this is what I believe, that I'm immediately going to be associated with everyone's church trauma and all the ways they've been hurt by people in the church and everything. And I'm like, okay, I understand that was your experience, but that's not who I am as a person. And I truly do my best to love people every day, even if they have completely different lifestyles and beliefs than me. And I think that was like an interesting thing about being in Costa Rica, was because I was like, oh, okay, like I don't really drink to get drunk. Like
that was the first thing I remember talking to you about.
And everyone was like drunk in the pool.
I was really drunk. I'm not gonna lie. I was really drunk, and I remember you saying that you don't drink.
I was like the one person I think who wasn't drunk, who was just chilling on the side of the pool.
Keep in mind, okay, I was 18 at the time also. But you know what? In Costa Rica, that was legal. But I remember talking to you about that, and then me being like, oh my gosh, Callie, make sure that you don't get like wasted, because like you don't want to have like that stigma that this is the artist who just gets wasted. And I was like, oh God, okay. But that was,
but for me, it wasn't even like,
voice.
For me, it wasn't even like a super like religious thing. Yeah. It was like, I just don't really choose to get drunk just because I like to like be in control of myself, and I don't have any desire to not be in control of myself. Like I want to have self-control. Exactly. But also because I'm very aware of how I affect people too. And so I'm like, I don't ever want to like make a choice like that and then affect all these people around me in a negative way, you know? So in a lot of ways, it's more than just like a
religious thing,
a choice based on solely on my beliefs. You know what I mean? It's very much of like, I'm very aware of the people around me. But so I just was like, yo, I just feel like I'm just supposed to be here and like hang out with people and love people and like have real conversations. And that's like what I did, which was funny because people ended up telling me like, this is the most real conversation I've had this entire weekend here. Like when I would talk to them and I was like, well, that's cool. But like, I don't know, I think going back to that, it was cool because it was like when you were like, oh, this is what I believe. I was like, oh, okay, let's go. You know, because it was like, I feel like she is someone who she has like a real relationship with Jesus, and she's not just like a religious person. And I'm the same way, where it's like,
I'm a child of God.
It's like, I don't live my life according to like religious rules. I live my life every day from like a real friendship with Jesus. Yeah, relationship. And that's like, that is my belief, you know, because I'm like, I literally probably wouldn't be alive without Jesus, because I was like a traumatized child as a kid who didn't know how to process anything. You know, my parents got divorced when I was young. And it's like, even as a young kid, I tried all these things to like relieve myself of the pain that I was feeling from all of that. Yeah. And nothing worked. And the reason I chose to believe in Jesus was because I had a real experience with him, where for the first time in my life, I literally felt the weight of like my pain
off of your shoulders.
And I was like, this is the only thing I've experienced that has actually given me tangible relief from what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so I was like, Jesus is real. Like it was just,
once
it
you
wasn't
know,
like,
you can't like, once you know his love, you can't not know. Like you can't unknow those things or those feelings. Like, I definitely understand that because I have things that specifically would stand out to me going through everything that I have been through and whatnot. And especially like in high school time, like I hit actually it was like my rock bottom. And I did the same thing. I was coping with things and pain in negative ways that were self-sabotaging myself and making things worse. But part of it is I just didn't know my worth. And so I remember praying and then God showing me like a clear way, and at that time, you know, it's not like I heard a voice come to me or something like that. It was like, I know God was there the whole time. I just didn't see him because I didn't know exactly how I saw God or heard God because it's different for everybody. So I kind of needed to like start really looking into things, and he just gave me a very clear sign that was like, hey, everything's going to be okay. You know, and this and this and this. And so after that moment, I was also the same way. I was like, you can never not know Jesus's love once you know it. Like you will never unknow it.
It literally changes your life.
Oh, and completely.
That's why something that's sad to me is, you know, people who have had very negative experiences with people in the church or people who say they believe in Jesus and stuff. It's like, obviously people aren't perfect, you know, people make
mistakes every
people make
single
mistakes.
day.
Some people make horrible decisions. But I think like for me, it's like, if you truly know the love of Jesus, you're going to do everything in your power to love people well. Like even if you might not agree or like have the same lifestyle as someone, I am around people like that every day. But for me, I am like, I could never, even if someone has a different lifestyle or belief than me, I could never treat them horribly ever.
Exactly.
Because I know the way that Jesus loves me. I can only see people through the way he loves them now.
Exactly.
And so it's like, even if you don't believe the same thing as me or have the same lifestyle as me,
there's a respect that's already
I'm going
there.
to respect you and love you and value you and treat you as a human being because that's exactly what Jesus would do.
What is it? It's love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and that really is... Like there's a lot that goes into it. I know that we were going to talk about like people.
Yeah,
that we could
do like a whole episode on just God. This.
Yeah. But it ties actually into that for me because so for the longest time, it was only like a couple of years, but it felt like forever for me. I was going through this constant loop of being unsure of what I'm doing, being unaware of the people around me and what their intentions were. Also just being naive, being uneducated about the business, because as much as it is like the music industry, it's the music business that like all artists need to know. But there's not like a book of secrets that people just give you. Like it's really like you're on your own, figure it out. And so that's why
kind of just have to get into it and like get around other people who are doing it, and that's how you learn it.
And you pick up on things. And so like even whenever you're saying that, you know, we like to watch documentaries and stuff like that. Growing up, because I never went to college and I immediately went straight into music. I was doing music whenever I had just turned 18. I think I started like February of 2019 is when I started. And technically, I guess I was 17. But I was always placed around people who were much older than me or had way more experience in the industry than I did. And the biggest piece of advice that I would always get from people is just be a sponge. Like, you know, if you're sitting in on a session, it's not even your session, be a sponge and soak up the knowledge that you're seeing or soak up the things from your surroundings and, you know, learn, because that's the most important thing that you can do. That's how you're going to grow and be educated. And so for a while, it honestly did take me a long time. I have so much music in my catalog, and I literally have, now I have 4 singles out and then the EP remixes of the same song. But like, I didn't start releasing music until 2021. And at that time I had like over 50 songs in my catalog, like ready to go to be released. But I was constantly thrown in this loop of also like being told what I should look like as an artist, what I should what kind of music I should make, what my sound should be, how I should dress, how I should talk, how I should carry myself, who I should be friends with, who I need to avoid. Yeah. And it was just it was overwhelming. Yeah. And I didn't know, really that many. You were one of the only people that I would talk to at that time about music because, I love my friends so much and they always have my back, the people I grew up with or my little circle, but they don't know anything about the music industry. And I didn't know anything about the music industry at that time. So it was kind of like the blind leading the blind.
That's something that like I kind of had to learn too, which this is like a good piece of advice to people who are listening, regardless of like what industry you're in or what you're pursuing, is you do need to surround yourself with people who are in the same industry. Healthy, positive people who are like genuine people, safe for you to process things with, who are in the same industry as you, and not put this massive expectation on people around you, whether it's like your family or your close friends or things like that, people who might not be in the same industry, to not put this huge expectation on them to like be the person that you process it with.
Exactly.
And to be the person who understands, because truly a lot of those people are not going to understand. And that was something I also had to come to terms with, was like,
even our families.
I'm basically the only person in my entire family who has chosen to pursue music as a career.
Same.
Ever.
I am too.
Ever.
I am too.
Yeah. And so
they don't get it.
No. And there are some people who grow up with musical parents and things like that. I feel very blessed with the family I grew up in and stuff. So I don't have anything
like ill will.
Any ill feelings about not growing up that way. But for me, I definitely had to learn like, my family probably, they're not going to be the best people for me to like, if I need to talk to someone who understands that I can process with, they're probably not going to be those people.
Oh, same.
Same thing with like, really besides you, all of my closest friends, none of them live here, but all of my closest friends, none of them are involved in music.
Nope.
And so I had to learn the same thing with them, where it was like, I can't put this huge expectation on them to be those people for me because they're not in it and they don't understand it. And I think what helped me to realize too was like one of my close friends, her name is Paige. She does CrossFit. She's super passionate about CrossFit. I do not do CrossFit. I'm just trying to like get myself on a consistent workout schedule.
Hey, I feel you on that one.
And so like, it's probably the same thing where, if she were to come to me and be like, process all her stuff out with me having to do with CrossFit, I would be like,
what?
Bro, I don't know
what any of that means.
I don't even know whatever you just are. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing where it's like, I can't go to her or, other friends of mine or my family and be like fully expecting them to understand what I'm talking about when they're like, I don't even know what sync licensing is.
Oh, well, and the thing is like, even if you are in the industry, there's still things that, especially with you being a producer, when you would say like little technical terms, I'm just like, okay, wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I'm like, which I feel like me being friends with you, I'm constantly a sponge because I was telling my mom this earlier today. I don't know how you do it. You literally do everything. Everything. Like I only met actually my mom and then Shane. Yeah. Who's like my uncle basically. He's also in the industry, but literally y'all are the only three people that I know that do everything. Like I don't understand it.
I think something that's cool, because you were saying that like you feel like you're a sponge around me sometimes, is I feel like both of us are slightly involved in different things. Yeah. So for me, it's really cool because I can talk to you and I can be like, whoa, she's like doing this. And I'm like not necessarily doing those things. And then like, it feels like I'm like in a lot of ways more on the sync side. Yeah. You're very much more on the artistry side. Yeah. Which for me, I'm like, I'm an artist and obviously I have my artistry, but I'm going hard after sync placements. Exactly. Whereas like you're going hard on the artistry side. So it's like,
we're like the yin and yang of the music industry, which is nice because like I can bounce ideas off of you or ask you for advice on certain things, and you can do the same thing for me. And like even where it goes as like our connections wise, like we were talking about maybe wanting to do a music video, and like I know a videographer here because I've done that before. I don't know
anyone,
but here. Like whenever
I'm like not really doing that, because for me I'm like, let me just crank these songs out and get them pitched for placement.
See, and I don't know I'm like anything not about even that
focused
world.
On like, let me do music videos and do this and try to like boost my artistry. I'm just like, maybe that'll happen when I land placement.
But it's nice because we both are going about trying to really make a name for ourselves in this industry, because we both don't think that we've made it yet.
Yeah.
I know I haven't yet, and I know that I don't know what that feeling is supposed to feel like, but whenever I can support myself off of my music, that's when I'm be like, I've made it.
Yeah.
Or like
exactly.
when I sing at the Super Bowl, because that's going to happen one day. Mark my words.
That's how I feel, is like when I'm doing this full time and making my full income off of it, like I will feel like I succeeded.
Exactly.
You know,
and
which I feel like I'm getting closer to that space with having a pub deal now and everything, and potentially being able to land huge placements, you know, but it's like, I feel the same way where I feel in the space too of like, I don't feel like I'm there yet. Like, I feel like I'm closer,
we're close.
You know, but it's cool because it's like in Costa Rica, we were like, we know nothing. I wasn't even producing. I was a baby producer.
I didn't know anything. I literally, I'm telling you right now, we went in like September, and I started doing music professionally in February. February is like the first time I ever walked into a studio. Yeah. So like I didn't know anything. Yeah. And I was just sitting there trying to be a sponge. I still have my notebook from Costa Rica. There's like a little page, like part of the page is like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just sitting in here hoping something sticks. Like I know it's like written in my notebook, because I had no idea what any of this meant. I just know that I like to create music, and I pull lyrics from what I'm feeling, and that's how I figure out what song I'm going to write, because I didn't know any of the technical business stuff.
And that was definitely like one of the most impactful things about being a part of the Billboard 500 Club at that time and going to Costa Rica was I'm like, I would not actually probably know any of the business side of things that I know today if I hadn't have hopped into that club and then gone to Costa Rica, because it like that really, I feel like, launched me into where I'm at now in a lot of ways, you know, because right after that I went back to California. And then COVID happened, and then like shortly after, and then I was like, okay, this is the time for me to like really go in with producing and learning how to mix, because that was something too, was being in the room with like other producers and stuff in Costa Rica, where I became aware of like, oh, I'm not as good as these other people, which was like humbling, but also like
it was a humbling
fuel to the fire, because I was like, okay, I need to go back and like up my game with producing, and I need to learn how to mix well, because I didn't know anything about mixing at all. So COVID hit, and then I just zoned in on that. And I actually, what you were talking about earlier of like putting yourself around people who are better than you in certain things, like that's something that I have kind of learned over the years, was like, if I want to be good at something, I need to like intentionally get around people who are great at it, which I've done like a whole episode about that, that you guys can go back and listen to, is like, that's one of the ways that you get from point A to B, is reaching out to people who you know around you, who you're like, this is what I want to do. They're doing it, and they're doing it really well.
And not being embarrassed, being embarrassed to ask for help either. Because if you never ask questions, you will never learn. That's like something my dad told me whenever I was young in school. I was always embarrassed to ask questions, because I was like, maybe everybody else knows the answer to this or something, but I have no idea. And so if you don't ask, you're never going to learn. And that was like a big thing in this industry about, and there's
nothing embarrassing about that.
Everybody's
like,
been there at one point or another.
I think people feel embarrassed, because I know for me, I used to feel embarrassed about it, because I used to have this like belief that, oh, that person's not going to want to help me. Like, they're not going to like, you know.
Well, and you know what? Some people don't. Some people don't want to help you.
And if they don't want to, they're just not the right people. Move on.
Exactly.
You know, like that's something I had to learn, was I'm going to reach out to the people that I know are doing this well, and the right people are going to help me. Exactly. You know? And so at that time, which you were talking about that earlier, I think that's so valuable to do if you're wanting to like really become good at something that you're dreaming about specifically. So like at that time, I just thought of other producers who were either in Costa Rica or in the Billboard 500 Club that I was like, who's great at this? Or who do I feel like is better at it than me? Yeah. And I just started reaching out to those people and like, hey, can I take like an hour Zoom lesson from you about mixing? Yeah. And I'll pay you, like, just tell me what you want me to pay you. And it was super affordable because all of them were so nice. And they were like, oh, I'll do like an hour session with you for like $50. And I was like, that's so affordable. Exactly. I'll do it. And I just hopped on multiple sessions with people. And in a lot of ways, that's how I ended up learning to like mix well, you know, and just went hard after that. So definitely like putting yourself around people like that who are better than you. It helps to like really move you along in the things that you want to do. So it's like at the time we both were like, we don't know like anything. Let me try to reach out to some people and try to like grow in this, you know? And for me, that definitely took me on a track cause I knew I really wanted to get into sync licensing. So that like really helped me get into that. And then for you had like a slightly different journey to get where you are right now.
So basically after Costa Rica, I ended up moving to Nashville January of 2020, which was like the worst time to move to a new place. I knew 3 people here. One of them is my age, and she went to school at Belmont. She's one of my good friends. Her name's Riley. And she was kind of she was studying like, I think it's called CEI, like creative entertainment industry or something like that. I didn't go to college, so I don't know. But she was learning something on that side, obviously in the industry. And then I had Shane and Eric, who are like my uncles and basically family for me. And one of them is a songwriter, and like, I mean, he's one of the guys that literally does everything. But then the other one is on the publishing side and, you know, more on the business side. So I ended up moving here because Shane was kind of like my mentor at that time. We were writing music and stuff like that. But honestly, I just didn't know who I was as an artist, because before I had moved, I was told to go into this genre or this genre or this genre. And what's funny is where I started wanting to be pop R&B, but still being able to do like branch out and do like a rock song because I love the grunginess of that. Or like I just did is doing like a disco pop song, you know, wanting to be able to do more than what's just in a genre. I mean, and to be honest with you, I didn't even really know how to describe that. So I'm sure the people that I'm talking to didn't even understand how to like where to pick up on that. But I was going through this loop of just being unsure in myself, unsure in my abilities, unsure in the people around me, unsure with what I was doing with life. I was also like newly 19 in a new state, in a new city that's not close to home.
On your own.
On my own. Trying to be an adult.
And then you were like in a tornado.
Oh God. I mean,
and then COVID hit.
So then I went.
Like the worst time to move here.
It was so bad. So then I ended up going back to Houston, and then Shane and Eric actually ended up coming and staying with us, and quarantining with us. And so Shane and I were writing a lot. It was honestly like our own little music retreat, which was awesome. And then my mom, I laugh when I say this, but my mom forced me back to Nashville because I had such a horrible experience when I first moved here. I was like, no, I'm not going back. I don't care. I'm not going back. You cannot make me. And then she was like, well, we're funding your music career, so you're going back. And I was like, yes, ma'am.
I'm glad she made you come back.
Me too. You know what? Moms always know or at least my mom always knows what's best, even when I don't think that she knows it. But whenever I moved back here, I lived with a songwriter, and her and I were writing all the time. And, you know, she was a lot older than me, but even then it was kind of nice because I didn't really have a whole lot of friends here. That were my age. So I wasn't really being distracted by going out and partying and things like that. Like I was really just working at like a little juice place here, and I was writing music. And also like Shane and Eric, they introduced me to this wonderful woman. Her name is Suzanne, and she is my therapist / life coach. She is extremely, extremely smart and works with literally everybody in every industry, whether it's like just NASA or like, you know, like very intelligent people. And I'm glad that they introduced me to her because she is one of the people that, I mean, I talk to her every Monday and I've got problems. Don't get me wrong. Everybody's got their own problems, but she also helps me like, I don't know, should I take this job? Should I not take this job? Like, I don't know. I'm thinking about moving. Do you think I should move here? Like, you know, helping me just navigate life, which I mean, honestly, it's been one of the biggest blessings. And then Maria, the woman who I lived with, who was a songwriter, she introduced me to this guy named Lucas, who's like kind of now acting as a manager for me. And so as I've been writing and, you know, having people kind of be part of my team, even with my friendships with people,
yeah,
I have started to go based off of my gut feeling, because my gut feeling is God.
Yeah.
And everybody
Same.
that I have in my circle, I mean, I have a pretty small circle, but the people that are in my circle all believe in God. And it's like an open space and a safe environment for where I can be completely myself and not worry about being judged. And like, there's a level of trust there. And, you know, even with friends, like I've always been friends with people. Always been friends with a lot of people, but people that were friends with me that were like, had the best intentions for me, it hasn't always been the same way.
Yeah.
And especially as like we move forward, one of the things that I remember learning in Costa Rica was like being selective of what friends you bring to music industry like events.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if I don't have a friend that's in the industry, then I would bring some of my other friends, you know, my hometown friends, and me being like, I don't know if I want that person to represent me. Then it kind of makes you think like, should I have this person around me if I can't trust that they're going to represent me well?
Yep. That is huge.
Like, I really started learning that. And then also my therapist, Suzanne, told me that, you know, the 5 people you surround yourself with is a sum of who you are. The 5 people you're constantly around, the most, you know, people that have influence on your life or influence on you, that's the sum of who you are. So if you look at those 5 people and one of them honestly isn't that good of a person, but you're just always around them, probably should cut them out of your circle. Like,
it's hard too, because when you're like actually friends with some of these people, like it's kind of sad, but you do have to actually
put that boundary up.
You have to learn to distinguish like business from purely friendship.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had to learn at different points in my life too. Like when I was living in California, before I came to Costa Rica, I was playing live a ton. I was doing like all blues rock music live, and I would have instrumentalists play with me. So I was like a solo artist, but I would have musicians play live with me as like a full band. And there were some people that played with me very regularly that I became really good friends with and would hang out with them all the time. This was also when I was single, so I wasn't like married yet.
Yeah.
And so I would be hanging out with these people all the time. And I remember when I had to learn that lesson of like distinguishing the business from the friendship and having boundaries, was I was actually doing a music video for one of my songs and I was directing it. So I was kind of the one who was like, I had planned the whole thing. I was kind of overseeing all of it. The musicians who were going to be in the music video with me showed up, you know, and I was working with videographers that I had never worked with before. So first time working with these people. And I intentionally did not have things like, there were couches and stuff at the place we were doing this video. For the musicians when they weren't being filmed to be able to just hang out. And I had like snacks and things for people, but I intentionally didn't have alcohol, like certain things, because I was like, I want people to be as professional as possible on this set.
And it's sad that you like have to hope that, but like, you should walk in having that like expected professionalism about you, but a lot of people don't.
No,
especially when it's not their own project. They're there whether they're being paid or not. They're just there, and it can cause like a divide, and it definitely can change and transform the energy in the room.
And what happened was when I was running around like directing things with other people or myself filming, whatever, some of the musicians decided to go next door to get alcohol, brought it back into the set. One of them got super drunk, and towards the end of filming this video, I was like, oh no. And this was like a good friend of mine at the time. And I literally like had to apologize to the videographers.
It's embarrassing.
And say like, this, I don't know why this person chose to do this. I intentionally did not have alcohol on the set, like all these things. I literally went out to dinner with this friend of mine, and I was like I wanted to really like connect with this person first and find out like, hey, why did you feel like you needed to drink? Like, were you feeling vulnerable? Like, you know,
anxious.
It turned out this person was feeling like I felt really overwhelmed being filmed, like just me. Like it felt, because he had never been in that setting before of having a camera like right on him, you know? And I was like, that totally makes sense. Like, I understand why that would make you feel vulnerable. And so I tried to like really come at him as a friend at first and be like, hey, like I care about you. I want to know why you chose to do this. Like, I really do care about that, and connected with him about that first. And then after that, it was like business face. Yeah. And I straight up was like, I'm just letting you know, like, this will never happen again. Yeah. And because I was like, if you are playing for me, you are representing me as an artist. And I was like, if something like this ever happens again, you will never play for me again. And I had to like have that boundary, even though he was a good friend of mine, because it was like, you are ultimately like the people I put around me are ultimately representing me as an artist if they are there for me as an artist. So what you were talking about, like having your friends with you, like you have to really think about like, completely, do I trust this person to be professional and represent me well in these settings? Well, you know? And also, so like, right now, I have a friend named Faith. We joke around about this all the time. She travels with me constantly, especially like this year with me traveling like back and forth with New York or in Houston. I've known her since 3rd grade. Yeah. We've only not been friends once, and that's because we had some high school drama. But we're both very like hard-headed people. She believes in God. She is like my ride or die person. And everybody jokes around with me now because I'm like, no, she's going to be on my payroll. Like, guaranteed. Her dad's like, good, because she needs to start making some money. And I'm like, okay, well, when I start bringing it in, then I'll start bringing it to her also. Yeah. But so recently, like whenever we've been in New York, I do choreography sessions with a guy out there. And like, so Faith would come with me, or I would go, and I met an artist and her manager and love them. And so Faith was with me, and it was great because it's like, if I'm ever feeling anxious or nervous about something, like I shot a music video while I was in New York, and Faith was in it. And that day I was just like so anxious because everybody was there for me, and it was my first like really professional setting. I had hired extras, I had hired people on my team, there was lighting, like it was a very professional place. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not that professional of a person. Like, oh my gosh, I'm stressing out. I'm like, I hope they don't expect me to like know what I'm doing, because I'm not an actress. Like, there's a reason why I'm a singer, not an actress. Right. And I was just like stressing out about the little things, like, oh my gosh, does my outfit look right? Like, I don't know. And like, whenever I would talk to her, I'm like, Faith, I just need you to talk to me for a second. Yeah. And she can be that person and like see me in my most anxious state and actually relieve some of that anxiety, or just make me feel more comfortable. Because I'm a very extroverted person, but that was really outside of my comfort zone, because I had the worst thing is everybody being there for you makes you like, not only do you want to do the best that you can do for yourself, but then also you need to make sure that everything around you is okay, because people are here for you. So at the end of the day, it's your name on it. It feels like a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, because you're like, I need to make sure that these people are taken care of, that they're like, everybody's getting along, having a great time. Yes. And so it's not just about, here, let me show up and do my thing. It's like you want to make sure, or at least we're the kind of people that want to make sure everybody around us is also feeling great and feeling comfortable and, you know, whatever. So she is one of those people that I could bring her to any event. She's not in the music industry. Right now she thinks she wants to do fashion. I think she would be great at it, doing something in design. But like, everybody jokes around with me whenever I go back to New York, and they're like, hey, is your road dog with you? And I'm like, yep, she's right here. Yeah. Like, that's amazing though. Like, that she's not involved in the music industry, but is able to be that person for me. I have a friend kind of like that who's back in California. Like, we don't live in the same place now, but, when we used to both live in Reading, she would like go to gigs with me kind of like that. And there was one gig that I played. It was a 4th of July gig in a little town. There was tons of people there. And it was outside, but a crazy situation happened where I was playing, and a guy who was drunk like tried to get on the mic while I was singing. Oh gosh. And she happened to be with me.
Like your bodyguard.
Yeah. She
like,
was
back up.
She was sitting behind me in a chair while I was like playing, because I was playing for like 4 hours or something.
Yeah.
This guy comes up, like gets in my face, and I had to like stop singing, obviously.
Yeah.
And I had to like hold the mic and be like, hey, I can't let you on the mic. Like, you can't. And he like wouldn't take no for an answer and was trying to whatever. And my friend, her name is Natalie, but she gets up out of her seat in like a heartbeat, is up there. She gets up there, takes this guy. She's like, let's go dance over here. Takes this guy off to go dance with him to get him away from me. And of course, I'm like on the mic. She
understood the assignment.
I'm like on the mic playing, watching this. And I'm just like, if this bro tries anything
with her.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I was like, oh dang, like she was such a good person to like go to gigs and stuff with me. Cause she was like she's someone who's not involved in the music industry, same thing, but who like, she is involved in the arts because she actually does makeup and hair and all that stuff. Cool. And a big dream of hers is to like style, like do that for celebrities and stuff. Okay, well, I need a stylist, so I'm gonna get her information. Yeah, she lives a few hours from LA, and she's trying to make her way down to LA. But she's like certified professional everything. She like basically did my hair and makeup for any music related thing, whether it was like a music video. She did it for my wedding. Like, she understands an aspect of it because she's involved in that
There's
side.
There's a creative aspect to it.
Yeah, like she gets it because she's very passionate about getting into the entertainment industry in that way. So even though she wasn't involved in music, she was like able to be that person for me. So I get that. And that's really cool that you like have a friend like that who understands. For me, that person in many ways now is Cam. Yeah. Because like when I met him, he just got it because he's a drummer. Like he understands production. When I realized he understood production terminology and was speaking it to me, I was like, I'm about to marry this man.
Exactly. Because I was like, a lot of people don't. I understand a couple things, but like there's a whole vocabulary.
It is like
make a dictionary for it.
It's a whole world, and it's such a time consuming thing that for me, I had dated people before him where it was like they weren't involved in music or that side of things. I was just like, yo, this is like a whole part of my life that takes up a very large chunk of my life that if people don't understand it and they're that close to me, like it could be a problem. Yeah. You know? And so when I met him, it was like he just understood all of it. Yeah. And I was like,
it's nice because it's a whole thing that you don't have to go and explain.
And I think like some people can marry people who aren't involved in music and stuff and it works.
I probably won't marry a musician. I think I'm good.
She over here trying to find that
athlete.
She's trying to find that pro sports.
It's just something about athletes, man. They just do something to
me. Yeah, I think for me, I realized I needed to be with someone who was in it and understood it because I wanted to like partner with someone in that. So when I met him, I was like, wow, he gets it. And it's really cool because like now I'll actually pull him in to like listen to songs I'm producing and he'll give me like feedback, or he'll even like our song, he ended up playing the drums on it, which that was so cool. That was so cool because
it made such a difference too.
He got an electric kit when we moved into this apartment. That was the first time we've recorded him on MIDI drums.
Oh, really?
That was the first time for that song. Because we had it hooked up, but other songs I had done before you, he didn't play on them because they were different. But that one was a very specific, like, oh, we can play full kit on this because of the vibe of it. So it was so cool to like actually plug it in and have him get on the electric kit and like lay down drums for the song.
It definitely made a difference in the song. Like it totally brought so much like life and energy to it.
It's just like, because you get the real dynamics of a real drummer playing instead of it all just being like, here, let me create a full drum kit and try to make it sound real, which is what I do most of the time. But like, it's important to have people around you in the industry you're in who you can learn from and who you can kind of like bounce situations off of to know like, is this a good situation or like a toxic situation? Yeah. You know, because we both have experienced that as well. Yeah. Like we both have been involved in things where
it doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. Something feels off and it feels
there's a lot of uncertainty around it, or there's a lot of negative emotions around it. And one thing that I've honestly learned is like, if it's causing you, is it causing you more peace or more stress?
And
if
like
it's causing you more
anxiety
stress
and
and
fear.
anxiety and honestly like just darker feelings, that's not God. That's not God's will.
Nope.
Whenever God is light, God is love, God is peace, God is like serenity and calmness.
Yeah.
And obviously there's things that make you a little nervous sometimes, but if it's like a lasting thing,
where it's like
obviously the situation
time,
is not right.
Yeah, where it's like every time I'm around this person, I feel
shut
this
down.
way. I feel shut down.
Small.
I feel afraid, intimidated, and which sometimes feeling intimidated by someone can be like you might feel insecure, and that's like a personal thing.
Yeah.
But it's different if it's like I genuinely feel like every time I'm around this person, I don't want to potentially do anything
that could set this person off.
Yeah, because you like can't predict that person, and it feels really
just
like
uncertain.
Yeah.
And honestly, like especially being in such a creative space, you need like actual space to feel like you could be yourself, because especially like in writing rooms, whenever you are working with other songwriters, or even if you're just writing by yourself, there's a space around you and the energy around you that there's a difference in it if there's one person that can like trigger all of this energy and make it not feel right.
Yeah.
Like you need to be vulnerable when you're writing music. And especially like I write from places of past experiences, and I joke about my life and how crazy it's been, but like, you know, if I'm talking about a serious matter, I don't want somebody to make me feel small or somebody to make me feel, you know, less than or bad about myself or whatever it is when I'm trying to be vulnerable about like a situation that I've been through. So whenever you're working with people, like I've honestly learned, I go about my gut feeling. I feel the energy. If the energy is off, it's not right. Something is not right, whether it's I'm having a weird day and I'm the one causing the energy to be off. And if I go and work with this person again and something still feels off, then I know it wasn't me.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like being able to, because I definitely feel energies around people. Not like in a like spooky way, but like
but you can tell like a vibe a person gives off.
When we wrote Against the Grain, like the energy was definitely like light, and it was fun, and like it was fast, and like
it didn't feel like something we were trying to like force out.
It felt organic and natural. It was an organic relationship.
Honestly,
organic song.
Yeah, that's honestly how I feel every time I hang out with you too. Same. Is I just feel like I can just be fully myself, and I don't feel like I'm having to like try to do things a certain way. Like it just feels like, oh, I can just relax and I can just be myself. And it's always felt like that with you, and that has translated in our writing and stuff. Completely. Which is so cool. Like Against the Grain, we did that song in like 3 days, which is crazy.
I was like laying on the ground of her little room that's a studio, and I was like laying on the ground like with my hood over my head, and I'm like, she took a video of me and I'm just like laying there, like, you know, with some people, like I've been in writing situations where I'm like super like stiff, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna write like this, like
and where like, you feel this pressure of like I have to perform well,
exactly,
you know?
And I like can't like joke around, because whenever I write, like I started laughing because I talk in a British accent sometimes. That's just what I do, and it makes me feel comfortable, and I don't know, it's just something that I've picked up and I can't stop sometimes. And whenever I was doing that, she started dying laughing, but I can guarantee you I have been in a writing room where I started doing that, and I was like, what next? I don't know what to write. And I was just doing it to myself, and they looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh, why did I do that?
I think like for me too, it's interesting because I have multiple hats, because I'm like an artist, I'm a songwriter, I'm a musician, I'm a producer. And I think when I'm in like the producer role, I think it's like me also being an artist and a songwriter and a singer and all this stuff too helps with me being a producer and working with other people. Completely. Because I'm like, I know what it's like to be the artist. I know what it's like to be the vocalist. And to be working with a producer in the studio. And so when I produce with people, I understand that side of things. So I think for me, I just always am like, I want this to feel like a safe space where people can be fully themselves and not feel like they have to perform perfectly, because I know what it's like to be on the side where it feels like you have to show up and like perform perfectly. And so I try to like think about it from that aspect, but also even as a producer, I'm like, I'm not going to perform perfectly. Like there's going to be times where I forget to turn something on and I'm like, oh gosh. You know, and I'm like figuring it out because I'm doing so many things, you know, and it's like the opposite thing where it's like, I don't want to be a producer on the producer side and feel like I have to do this perfectly for this person, you know, like, it's like, obviously I'm going to do my absolute best, but there's going to be times where I'm going to be like, what? Like, let me figure this out.
Or even like, you know, whenever, so in the song, there's a part where we did this like little talking part in it, where I said like, what you think you're going to stop me or something like that. But it was like something new that I have never done.
Me neither.
Have never, and she's never done it either. So like whenever we were doing it, I can tell you right now that I've been in writing situations where like I was not even comfortable to like maybe spit out a melody. And I also was like younger, so I was a little bit more insecure and like not confident in myself. But that is something that's completely out of my, like, I've never once, and then like hearing your voice, like speaking voice, which this podcast, like sometimes I can listen to it like once and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I sound like. So like whenever we were doing that, it needs to be a very comfortable space where I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is going to sound like. If I sound stupid, we're going to laugh it off and we're just not going to do it again. And
because it's vulnerable. Even when you're good friends, you're just like,
you're like, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. Cause like, and you're in the position where you're like, oh, I'm the one on the mic and I'm just sitting there like, let's do it, you know? Exactly. And so, it was just this moment of like, I'm kind of hearing this in my head, but you were hearing stuff too. Cause you were like, oh, what if I do this? And then it was like, I was hearing that in my head and we both were just like, let's just go.
We're just going to try it.
Like, it just felt like it was a safe space to like, let's just try it out and see what happens. And it ended up turning out so
super
it's
cool.
Like the coolest part of the song.
I know. It's like literally part of my favorite. It's my favorite part of the song. And I'm like, it's funny because there's no like singing part on it. Yeah. It's literally like breaths, which was like what I heard. And then like the speaking part, which is what she heard. And us like being able to like mesh the two of
pull the ideas together,
like it made it super cool, and it's something we've both never done before.
No, but we were just like,
let's try it out.
Let's just try it. And I think like what you're saying, like the environments you're in, being able to be with people like that who you can do those things with and feel safe to like express ideas or things that maybe you've never even tried before. But it's like sometimes, obviously, I mean, I'm sure you have felt this way, but sometimes you don't know until you know. Like you get with people and you think these are great people, and then when you're further into it, you're like, oh shoot. And sometimes you really don't know until you know. So it's not like there's like,
it's not easy.
Here's the formula for you to find the right people to hang out. It's like you really kind of just have to put yourself out there, and you will find those people along the way like we did, you know? And I mean, I have been in environments with people where we both have, you know, but it's like I have been in a specific environment where I really felt like my artistry or like my sound was not really accepted, if that makes sense. Like you were talking about being young and like having people who were like, you need to be like this, you need to, you know, basically telling you who you needed to be. Exactly. And in a lot of ways, like I was involved in an environment, a music environment where it felt like, okay, the majority of these people are like pop artists. I'm not that. And I have a very different, unique sound that there's like a handful of artists who maybe do this sound, you know, that I can even think of off the top of my head. And for me, I felt very similar to that in a way where it felt like, it feels like some of these people are trying to mold me into this cookie cutter, like, you need to do things this way. This is what works. And I tried that for a minute. Like,
I did too.
I did. Like,
we tried because we don't know. So we're
for like a year or so, I was
new, or you don't really know. Like you know, you don't ever want to shoot down somebody, especially somebody that's like usually more qualified than you. You don't want to ignore that.
Literally been in the industry for like 15 plus years. You know, that has great experience, great connections, a huge network, has like very professional person.
And you don't want to come off acting like you know better, but at the same time, it's like, well, how does if this person doesn't even know you or know the real you, then how are they supposed to know what you want to do creatively if they haven't even asked you or really tried to understand it?
But you have to like really know your identity.
Yourself.
Yeah, you have to know your identity and your worth so well to be able to look at people who are in the industry, who are very professional, have tons of experience and tons of knowledge, way more than you do.
Yeah.
And to sit back and go, okay, what can I receive from this person that is super valuable, that actually really can help me like further my career in this? And what can I like maybe let go of from this person that doesn't necessarily apply to me
in one ear and out the other.
You have to like really know your worth and identity, because especially in the music industry, there are a lot of artists who are so desperate for like a big break that they're like, let me sign the contract. Let me take this whatever opportunity because it's with a legit person. Yeah. And they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and they get themselves into horrible situations. And there's tons of like music documentaries about this type of stuff.
Almost
but it's like
every musician you meet has been in a bad situation when they first started out. Yeah. And honestly, like, I'm the kind of person that I don't regret anything that I've done. Yeah, I've made some pretty bad decisions, but like, could I have gone without doing some of them? Probably. But honestly, like, I learn in every situation. Yeah. And so for me, and I'm sure you can relate to this, you have to learn what you don't want to learn what you do want. Whether it's you need to learn the environment that you want to be around, and you only know that you want this environment because you know what the bad environment feels like. So you don't want that around you. Or, like for me with genres, you and I both relate to this, that we are not cookie cutter, bubblegum. Anything. Bubblegum, anything.
You can't be put in a box. And also people are like, you have to have this one sound.
You need to have this sound and you can't change. But do you know what? I was just rewatching, or actually watching for the first time, the Taylor Swift documentary.
So good. The Americana one?
Yes.
So good.
I will be honest, I wasn't a Taylor Swift stan. There are some people that are like Swifties. I was not that person. I respect her a lot, and I've always respected her for knowing her audience and knowing who she is and being unapologetic for that. And also, she's a talented songwriter. I just think that there was a time that the music that she was creating just wasn't for me, which is fine. Yeah. I love her music now. But I was watching this documentary, and she was talking about how, especially as a female artist, that we constantly have to reinvent ourselves and remain interesting. And I was like, do you know what? I love that. And even the fact that she's on her tour right now, it's called the Eras Tour. It's talking about the different eras of Taylor Swift. And honestly, like, that gives me a sense of peace, and like, and not that I ever really needed this peace, because I was going to do it regardless. It just kind of feels nicer going into this, being like, I don't have to be just one thing, because I'm not just one thing, especially with like, I'm an edgy pop person. I'm never going to be bubblegum. It's just not who I am. Not a bubblegum person. I'm not a PG person. So I don't want to create PG bubblegum music. And like, I'll listen to it, but that's just not who I am. And I have like this grungy alternative rock sound about me, especially with my voice, that I love. Like, I love that side of me, and I don't ever want to lose that, because it's an edginess. Yeah. And then, but I have a dance background. I'm a world champion hip hop dancer. And so there's no way that was part of my life and was not supposed to be in my music career. So that's where the R&B-ness comes from. And honestly, growing up in Houston also, there's an R&B and soulfulness.
Like culture there.
How
the culture is,
I mean, there's a lot. It's really like R&B hip hop there. But, these are things that are about myself. Or writing, I listen to soulful music, and I have a soulfulness about me. I don't ever want to create music that doesn't like physically touch me, or like, that has that feeling to it, because that's why I love music.
Same.
And, so trying to like describe this to people they were like, oh, okay, well, no, you said pop somewhere in there. So you're going to be a pop artist. You're going to look like this. Or you said pop rock. So you're going to go and you're going to be totally pop rock, like Alanis Morissette styled, which love her. But like, there's all of these other aspects to me.
Like, she's not you.
No, exactly.
You're not her.
And I want to be me. I want somebody to hear my song on the radio or walking through Macy's and be like, oh, that's Calla. Because you can we do that with Britney Spears or Alanis Morissette or Beyonce. We're like, oh, that's so-and-so because they have their own sound. And that's what makes being a creative person so amazing.
But that can be like a process to figure out. Because I know for me, it was a process.
I just now figured it out.
Yeah. Like we were talking about earlier.
And it's still changing.
Yeah. Like we were talking about earlier, it's like you went through that where you had people who were like, you need to be this. And it's like, I went through this period of like a year and a half where I felt like I definitely bent to this side of like, oh, this person is professional and they know what they're talking about. So like, I need to be doing this.
And that's what I did
it's like,
too.
I was doing all these different songs and styles of music that I felt like
should be you.
Was what worked.
Yeah.
Or like I felt like was being told to me I should be doing because that's what works, instead of actually staying authentic to myself and doing the sound that, like you were saying earlier, for me feels like when I am creating this, I feel the most myself and I feel the most alive and the most passionate. Exactly. And that was what I had to like learn to get back to, which was when I zoned into, which is kind of funny because it was like right around the time I ended up getting married. But right during that time, I kind of do the same thing as you, where I go with my gut, and that's always God. Like it's always like, okay, I feel like my gut, like God is telling me I need to like zone into this with music. And at that time I was feeling like I need to completely stop collaborating with other people. Yeah. And I need to like zone into myself and my sound and my artistry. And I did that, and that was when the first song I ended up putting out was Smooth Criminal. And that was
I love
that was the first song that I put out that felt 100% me. It was like, this is me. Like I wrote this, like this whole sound and vibe of it feels like me. Yeah. I produced and mixed the whole thing myself. So it was like all me. Yeah. Which is really cool to me now because that's the song I landed my first sync placement with.
That song is so cool.
And it was the first song I put out publicly where it was like, this is 100% me. And I landed my first placement with it. Yeah. And which was with Riot Games. And that felt like such a huge accomplishment to me because it was like, wow, this was like something I did completely on my own. That feels 100% authentic to me and my artistry. And it was wild too, because like that type of sound, like I feel like the community that I was in weren't about it.
Yeah, like they weren't
accepting of it. And, but I just chose like, I'm going to stick with my gut and be authentic to myself. And what's wild is like, now I have this publishing deal and they literally wanted me for that sound. Wow. Like I am like pretty much I think I am like probably the only person signed to their roster specifically in the stomp clap rock vibe. Yeah. Like anytime they have anytime they have a sync brief for anything stomp clap rock or like folk rock or like like what we did, the Americana rock driven vibe, they send it all to me because that's why they signed me, because they were like, we need this and we want this and you're the person. And like I look at it and I'm like, wow, like I chose to really follow my gut and stay true to myself and my sound, even when it felt like other people didn't support it. Yeah. Just trusting and believing God that like the right people would recognize me for who I am and for the sound that I have. And that's exactly what happened. And now I'm like in the position where I'm getting to do all of that and for potential big opportunities, which is so cool. And it's like awesome because it's like I get to pull my friends in on it. So I'm like,
thank you. Actually, I don't know if I've actually thanked you for that, but thank you so much.
I'm like,
for thinking of me because I had such a great time. Just like working on it with you. We already knew we were going to work together.
So fun.
But I had like such a great time doing that. But then also like seeing what it is, and it's cool because it gets to or at least it's cool to me because I get to show another part of my artistry that's like not necessarily what I would release underneath me as an artist. Like I get to show these other avenues and these other like sides about me that aren't necessarily what I am releasing right now. And so it's such a cool opportunity.
Which was so cool
You're
though,
so
because
cool.
that's what I think about you. But it was so cool because it was like, oh, I know that Calla loves rock. And this is like an opportunity to like actually have you step into that vibe and put something out in that vibe, which is awesome. But also for me, it's so cool because it's like, yo, this song is going to land placements eventually.
Oh, I already know.
And what's cool is it's like when I win, like you win.
You win.
And I'm like, and you're one of my good friends, which is what's awesome. But it was like, just going back to like feeling like I almost needed to like leave this community or step out from being under these people, you know, which is actually funny because I did that when I came to your apartment because I remember it was that one day where where sometimes like you just need to put yourself around the right people who are like a soundboard for you to be like, you need to do this. And it was like one day where there was like tornado weather and it looked like it was coming towards where me and Cam live. And I was like, Calla, what are you doing? I was like, what are you doing right now? And you were like, nothing.
Laying in bed.
And I was like, you want to come pick me up? And you were like, I'm on my way. And I was like, come rescue me from this storm. And bring
me. Had like a whole safe with you.
I did. I did, with like all our birth certificates and crap in it.
Important information.
I was like, I'm bringing this with me just in case anything happens. It was so funny. I was
like, hey, we'll have a little tornado party at my apartment and do nothing but lay in bed and watch movies.
I look like a crazy person right now. I'm like walking out of my apartment with a safe. And like,
do you know what?
At
least you have a safe because I don't even have safe.
A survival bag, and you like pick me up. We go back to your apartment downtown, and that was like one of the best days because we were just like laid in your bed, watched music documentaries, and just hung out and talked and like ordered DoorDash and stuff. But I remember like sitting in the bed next to you, and I was just like, Calla, should I leave this community? And you were like, yeah. You're like, you should have done that a while ago.
Exactly. I was like, you haven't done that yet?
And then I was like, okay, I think I just needed the push from you. Yeah. I'm doing it right now. And I did it right then when I was hanging out with you, you know? And I think like that is something, is to have people around you who can be like, listen, this is a toxic environment, or these are not the right people.
Your feelings are validated.
These are not the right people for it. Like if you're feeling the way you're describing this does not seem healthy, like this seems toxic. And because sometimes when you're in it, you really don't know until you start describing what you're feeling to people. And then they're like, that's not normal.
When you hear it out loud, that's whenever you're like, oh gosh.
You're like, this doesn't, saying it out loud to another person that you trust and is safe.
And like, to be honest with you, there's a lot of it, whether it's in music or not, there's a lot of times where you'll feel uncertain or unsure about yourself. Yeah. Or, you know, I'm not going to assume, but most people don't want to come off as like this know-it-all, you know, especially because whenever we're like, well, we don't know everything about the industry. Yeah. Honestly, like the most qualified people still don't know everything about the industry. No. So you don't want to come off like you know everything, when especially like when you know you don't, but you know who you are. Yeah. And you know when something feels right and when something doesn't feel right. Yeah. And so trying to feel validated and being heard in that certain situation, or in those situations where you feel like it's unhealthy, you need somebody around you that's going to be like, no, look, I hear you. I see what the situation is for what it is. Yeah. You know, and one of the things with being like a child of God is once you know, you can't not know. Mm-hmm. And you don't ever want to be surrounded by people who bring others down, or honestly just are not kind people. Like there are billions of talented people in this industry. Yeah. I'm not working with assholes. Sorry, not doing it. Yeah. There's so many talented people who are kind.
There's
and who are
more than just talent.
Yeah. Talent will get you about halfway there. Yeah. You need the other 50% off of who you are. Exactly. Because, and don't get me wrong, there's probably great people out there who I probably wouldn't mesh with, and they wouldn't mesh with me, but we're not going to tear each other down. Yeah. And when you're in an environment where somebody is tearing you down or making you feel unsure of yourself, that's not a good environment. Yeah. So that's like, it was something that I needed to listen to my own advice at that time too. I don't even know if I told you that, but I was kind of feeling like that at that time. And so when I was telling you that, I was like, Calla, listen to yourself. Like, listen to the advice you're giving, because it's something that you need to take and you need to remember. Because you're a dope person. And so if somebody isn't validating that, then guess what? They're not the right person.
Exactly. Yeah. So. And that's why it's so important to have other people like that, you know, who are in it with you and can also be like, and are healthy people and
genuinely
really
good people
genuinely good people who can be like, hey, you need to get out of this, or like, no, like that's like a toxic environment, you know? And I think that's something I'm super grateful for to have in friendship with you.
Same.
Because we are both so involved in this industry. So we understand each other with that, and we can actually be open and honest with each other. And we have that safety with each other to be like, hey, this is, you know, and even when you're going through periods where you feel discouraged, or you're going through things where you can reach out and be like, I'm feeling this way, and have that other person to be like, listen, this is who you are. This is like what God says about you. You know, I know it feels this way, but like, this isn't, you know? And I think that is so important, and to have people that continually inspire you and push you. This is something I actually haven't told you that I wrote on here, but whenever, this was something we did one night, which was really fun. She invited me over and was like, I really want to make like a dream board, like make dream boards. And
it was on November, which is 11. The 11th. And we like said a prayer at 11.
I didn't even realize it was that day.
Yeah, because
that is so weird.
I had a friend who wanted to do it because it was 11/11, 2022, so 11/11/22. I don't know, looking into the numbers, honestly, I don't know if it means anything to some people, but I thought, it was like, if there was ever a time to do this, today is the day. So keep going.
I think it was cool though, because she was like, I know this is something you would really love to do. We're going to do this. You should come over. So I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So I went over to her apartment with Riley, right? Yeah, with Riley. Which Riley has an awesome podcast you guys should listen to as well. It's called This Hits Different. She's been on it a couple times.
She's a great person.
I've listened to some of the episodes. It's a really good podcast. You guys should check it out.
Also, if you need like a good laugh sometimes, like there's some really funny moments in that podcast.
Yeah, because she talks about different things. Like she talks about dating and relationships. Yeah. But anyways, we were all over at your apartment, and I think I didn't even tell you this, but at the time, so that was November. So I don't remember if that was before or after I got my first placement. I don't remember. But I remember you were like writing down these huge dreams, like you were talking about earlier, like the Super Bowl. You were writing down these huge things.
Huge dreams.
And for me, I was like looking at what you were writing, and I was like, and you were talking about it, and I was like, dang, this is pushing something in me that almost is making me realize, like, I don't believe I can attain something that big. Like, it was like pushing these things in me where I was like, oh, like being around her right now and seeing how big she's dreaming, it's like God is using it to show me, like, hey, we need to talk about like why you don't believe these huge things can happen. Or that they're attainable. Because I think at the time I was like feeling pretty discouraged. That might have been before I got my first placement.
I think it was before.
Because I think I was like, I had felt like I was going so hard for like 2 years with sync and like with everything, and like nothing had happened. And I was just feeling super like defeated, because I was like, I'm literally giving my all into this, like all of my energy, everything. Nothing has happened yet. I kind of am just feeling like, is anything ever gonna happen? Like, is this ever gonna pay off? And and I think that was like around the time we did that, and I was like writing things on my board where it was like, I want to land like a TV placement, I want to land these things, I want to whatever. And I felt myself seeing what you were writing. It was like a challenge to me of like, I need to like not think so small, and I need to actually like dream bigger again, because
I love that,
because I feel like I've hit a place of discouragement where I am struggling to believe that I can actually achieve these things. And so I think that's something that's also like so important, is to have people around you where it pushes and challenges you forward and maybe even gets you face to face with things you might be believing about yourself, that you're like, oh, like I need to like re-engage with like what God actually says is possible for my life, and not stay sitting in this space of like discouragement, or, you know, which is wild to me now, because November, I think it was like right after that, I landed the Riot Games placement with Smooth Criminal. And then literally within like a week after that was when the Bus Music reached out to me.
Oh yeah.
And then they were like, we want to like do a test run with you to basically see if we want to sign you. I jumped into that, awesome. Got offered publishing deal with them now, and I'm signed to them. And now I'm like in this position where my songs are getting pitched for like $30,000 placement opportunities, you know, and it's been like a game changer. But I look back to that and I'm like, dang, like that was when I was in a space where I felt really defeated. But like being around you and like actually being around someone else who was in a more hopeful place and more of a like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna like win a Grammy, and I'm gonna sing at the Super Bowl, and I'm like, okay, dang, like, well, it like for me, it really pushed me to get face to face with myself, and like, okay, I need to like bring this back to God and let Him show me the truth, and not like listen to these discouraging thoughts or sit in this place of defeat, you know. And I think that's something that's also so important, is not just having people around you that you can process with, but people who are gonna like motivate and push you and challenge you forward, and be those people for you to open up with, and for them to tell you like, hey, I know this feels this way, but like that's not the truth. And you know,
can I tell you something?
So
I wasn't always like that.
I'm like, we're just getting all honest on this.
Well, it's actually really crazy that you say that, because I definitely wasn't always like that. You know, whenever I first started, it was 2019. It was, I want to say, before Costa Rica. Before Costa Rica. I went to New York with my mom and Shane. Shane was there. And I was processing and moving out of this place where I constantly felt like, God, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I don't know if I'm built out for this, because I had just graduated high school, and that would be like my first semester into college, but I didn't go to college. And so me having all this pressure, like I have to make it because I didn't go to college, and I don't have a plan B because plan A is working type of thing. But plan A actually really wasn't working. Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just like going with it. But also like, I wasn't as dedicated to it then as I was now, because I was very insecure. I felt very overwhelmed. I felt very unseen and unheard, and I was just unsure of who I was. And so it's hard to make music about who you are when you don't know who you are. And so I remember Shane wanted to take me to Magnolia Bakery because of Sex and the City or whatever. We got, our stuff, and we were sitting down at this park, and there was also like this huge pressure on me of needing to look a certain way, which I put that on myself, but others did put it on me as well. But then also like my parents were financially and still are supporting my music, which music is expensive. If you don't do music, I don't think you fully understand how expensive it really is. But especially when you're a new artist, sometimes you can get taken advantage of, and you don't really know like the real cost of things. So, having my parents support me, I didn't want them to just keep spending their money, but I necessarily wasn't making any progress as an artist. And Shane sat down with me, and there was 3 things that I took away from that trip. One of them was, if you're going to do it, you better freaking do it, because your parents are not just writing checks to write checks. They, not everybody has all of this money. Y'all don't have all of this money to just be doing this. So if you're going to do it, you better do it. And you need to own who you are. Second thing that I took away was God, because Shane really did introduce a whole nother, like I've always had my mom talk to me about God, but Shane added something to that trip that stuck with me. Where it's like, why would you dream so small? Like when I tell you, watching this man, I just want y'all to meet, because watching him, like all of the things that I'm just going to go do this today, and like does it at like a very professional level. Regardless if it's something he's ever done or not. He's like, I'm going to go do this. And like accomplishes it. And,
Yeah.
you know, it feels weird to say, but a lot of people don't think like that. I definitely, like, I'm learning to think like that, and I'm learning to, you know, manifest things. But he was the one that was telling me, like, if you want to sing at the Super Bowl, say, I'm going to sing at the Super Bowl one day. And, like, start putting that out there.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me, like, you're dreaming too small.
Yeah.
You're dreaming too small. You need to be thinking, because what you ask for, God will provide.
Yeah.
God will answer your prayers.
Yeah.
But if you're only asking for very small things, you know, the big things
that's what you can expect.
Exactly. And so Shane really put that into my head, and it stuck with me.
Yeah.
And then I started realizing the third thing to take away is that I am who I am. God made me the way that I am supposed to be made.
Yeah.
I have lived through the things that I was supposed to live through. So for the betterment of me.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't go through certain things, I would not be the person that I am today.
Yeah.
I would not write about the things that I write about. I honestly, if I didn't go through bad things, I probably wouldn't have anything to write about, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And like, those were the three things that I took away from that trip. Shane had a huge impact on me on that trip, because I mean, I was also 18. Like, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the industry. Like, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I just always remembered him telling me basically about like his experience and about his journey. And because he's had just a crazy journey also about, you know, where he started with music and, you know, what he was doing and all of this stuff. And so I remember looking at him and being like, when you don't ask God for certain things, or if you don't pray on certain things, or you don't lead with God on certain things, we are not aware of what we can accomplish.
Yeah.
Only God knows what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And so like, when you place these limits on yourself, whether it's with doubt or defeat, or, you know, even just saying negative things about yourself, like, you're hindering yourself.
Yeah.
He taught me to think big.
That's awesome.
You know, I'm sure my mom told me that at some point or another, but it's one of those things where it's like, I know she's telling me this, but I feel like she's telling me this because she's my parent. Like, it didn't stick with me, but another person telling me that, it stuck.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? I wrote, like, I'm going to go to Bali one day, or I'm going to Bali. I will have this. I will be financially stable. I'm going to have 2 apartments. One of them is going to be in Houston, and one of them is going to be and I wrote spacious apartment in New York City. You know, I will perform at the Super Bowl one day. I'm going to win Best New Artist at the Grammys. I'm going to have features with these rappers and these things, and I will have clear skin, which my skin is now clear. I will quit nicotine. I quit nicotine. Like, things like that. And I also believe the power. My mom always told me, like, when you write things down and you see them every single day.
Yeah. There is something about that.
There's a thing about that.
Is.
And I think also, like, Kim Kardashian said that she wrote like little, like, what her plan was, like her 5-year plan or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, in this industry, it's super unpredictable.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily plan things.
Yeah.
But things that you want to accomplish, and things that, instead of saying want to accomplish, things that you will accomplish.
Yeah.
And once you start moving from that spot, it changes you.
I think there really is something about actually, like, writing things down and putting it in front of you and, like, saying things out loud.
Yep.
And it can be vulnerable to, like, actually write it down or say it out loud, especially if, like, you're saying it in front of other people.
Yeah.
Or other people will see what you wrote down. It's funny. That's actually why this is up on the
You know what? I was already putting 2 and 2 together.
We put, like, a giant piece of paper up on this wall because me and Cam want to write down some goals and stuff. But, like, we did that at our old apartment.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where we wrote things down, and we literally did all of those things.
Yeah.
Like, it was like for Till Death Club, like, we're going to, you know, do this, and all of it happened. But I even remember when I was in California living with friends, this was before I met Cam. I remember, like, we put up a poster like that on our wall, and we all 3, like, wrote down a bunch of, like, dreams and things that we had.
Yeah.
And I put Costa Rica on there.
Really?
And yeah, I put Costa Rica because at the time I knew I was supposed to go to that retreat, but I didn't have any money to go.
Yeah.
And so I put it up on there because I was like, somehow I'm gonna get there.
Yeah.
And which was wild because people ended up, like, sponsoring me. There was actually a lady who, this is like a whole different story, but when I evacuated from the car fire, when I was in Redding, I was in Sacramento for like a week because I had evacuated and was just in Sacramento. And through like a mutual friend knew someone who lived in Sacramento who opened up her whole home to us to stay with her for that week, even though she didn't even know us, which was so kind. This lady, like, I showed her my music one night, and she basically even after I had left Sacramento, gone back to Redding, whatever, she ended up being one of the people that I want to say she sent me like $1,000 or something to go to Costa Rica. Yeah. I didn't even really know this lady, right? So it was just like crazy because I just put Costa Rica up there and then God ended up providing for me to be able to go. But I had put like a husband on there. I had put like all these different things and like, yeah. So I had written down getting an SM7B microphone, which I have now, and all of this stuff. And everything, like I would say probably like 75% of the things that we wrote down on that poster was highlighted because we highlighted all the things that happened. And so I definitely do believe there's something about that when you actually say things out loud or write it down, it like, and put it somewhere where you see it, it keeps it at the forefront of your mind. And something about that, like there is something powerful about that to help manifest it, you know?
For sure. Because, and do you know what is like, I also, whenever I first started doing music, which people will think that this is funny. Some people will probably be like, yeah, I do the same thing. I have so many like journals. Yeah. So many journals.
Yeah.
And somehow like there's always like a grocery list in there, some like random things. But I have so many journals and songbooks. And so I would always take my songbook with me. And I have maybe at least like 5 like thick ones completely filled with lyrics. And so I would always write down like the date and, you know, the title, and like I would do me trying to take like what little I had learned from like high school or like even like elementary English. I'd make like a bubble map and I'm like, this is what the title is, this is what the feelings are. Okay, now what situations can this relate to and what can I pull from this?
That's cool.
So like I have a song called Loyalty. It was the first song I ever wrote. Yeah. And I wrote down friends, wrote down society, and then I wrote down all of these guys that broke my heart. And or exes or whatever. And I wrote down like certain situations, and being able to see it even when I'm writing now. Like last week while I was in Houston, I started writing again. And I meant to say this earlier, but whenever you said that, you know, God kind of gave you that feeling that you needed to stop working with other people and really zone in on yourself. Yeah. I'm about to go through a period where I can't really release music. Yeah. And I'm really starting to find what my full sound is. Yeah. Because I get this feeling when I am in Houston and the music that I make in Houston. And if it's that easy for me to write music like that and sing music like that, instead of singing super pop, disco pop songs or whatever, if it's easier for me to do these things and it's just natural, shouldn't I be doing those things? Exactly. So anyways, I started writing down, and it actually helps me see like, oh, well, that doesn't really make sense, because after I'd write down the lyrics, I would read it just like regularly, being like, oh, does this make sense? Yeah. And it helps a lot. There's always something, there's a reason why you're supposed to take notes in school instead of just like take pictures. Once you write it down, you physically write it down and you read it out loud, it changes something in you. Like in your brain, in your brain chemistry. Yeah. And so
that makes sense.
That's something that I always try to do. And like a cute story is whenever I first moved to Nashville, and like, I didn't love Nashville, still finding my place here, but it is what it is. When I first moved here, you know, it was the first time I've ever lived away from my family. The first time I've ever lived in a new city. First time I was adulting. First time I was cooking for myself, whatever. You know, and I had a lot of unsure feelings as myself, as an artist, you know, as a friend, as a mentee, like all of these things. And my mom would write these little Post-it notes before she left, and she put them all around my little Airbnb that I was staying in. And sometimes they were like encouraging words. Sometimes they were like, smile today, or like, you look beautiful. Those really did make a difference in my emotions and my overall being, and seeing them every single day really did make a difference. So like,
I think it makes you think about those things more when it is actually visually in front of you. Yeah. I just bought like dry erase markers and stuff because we're going to write on that. But also I was like, oh, I can like put some things on the mirrors or whatever. Yeah. So like when Cam gets up to get ready, or I get ready or whatever, it's like there will actually be like positive things there to like remind us of things, you know. But even Cam has told me at the other apartment, when we had things written on the wall or on dry erase boards, he said it was very motivating for him because he was like, when I actually see it, like there is something about seeing it every day that's like, I need to do that, you know, and it does, it like motivates you to actually put action to like what you see in front of you.
Exactly.
In a big way. And I think, so I think that was really cool when we did that, where we actually wrote things down. Cause for me, it made me realize like, dang, I need to like dream bigger. Yeah. Like I'm dreaming kind of small. And now it's crazy because since then I landed my first video game placement. Yeah. I landed my first TV placement. And like
we did a song together. That was on my list. Is that we were going to do a song together.
We did a song together. And like now that I've landed certain things, I'm like, oh, well, dang, I need to like think bigger because like now these things feel way more attainable. Whereas like 6 months ago, I was like, I don't know if this will ever happen, you know? Yeah. But it's like, once you do start to like actually achieve some of these things, you have to, you're like, wow, I was dreaming so small. Exactly. You know? And so I think that's really cool being around you and seeing like, whoa, she's like shooting for these huge things. And then hearing your story about how Shane kind of like did that for you. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's so good to like put yourself around those types of people. And like you were saying, now you're like stepping into a place of finding your sound. I think it's so cool that even though we're kind of in some different aspects, like you're more on the artistry side, I'm like more on the sync side. I think it's cool because it feels like we've had really similar pathways to like where we're at now. Yeah. Where it's like we were here in Costa Rica.
Both both not knowing what we were doing.
Not knowing what we were doing. Yep. We like really went down these pathways of like almost kind of having other people tell us like, you need to be like this. Yeah. And then through that, it kind of pushed us both into like, no, I needed to like be myself and do my sound. And now it's like you're like zoning into and finding your sound. And like, I feel like I've like really found that. And now we're both like, it's like God is putting us into these positions and opportunities and platforms now where it's like we know who we are. Yeah. We like know what we're going after. We like have good heads on our shoulders and are able to be rational about things, you know, and like we know the sound that like God has put inside of each of us to do. And I think it's so cool that our journeys have kind of paralleled in that way to be where we are like right now, you know, which is so cool. And what I think is really cool too, which I didn't really even think about this when we wrote Against the Grain, but like everything that we've talked about during this whole podcast is basically what that song ended up being about. Completely. Which like when we wrote the song, it was just like, I got a sync brief and it was like, hey, they're wanting like this like driving rock Americana vibe. I feel like this could be really cool for us to collaborate on and like have your voice on. And then that was like the original intention. Like
I was like, say less, I'm there.
It was like, let's collaborate, let's write together, let's do it. Yeah. And so that was like the original intention was for like this sync brief. But then through that, everything we ended up like writing about and that was coming out of us
came from real places.
It did. And it came from this whole like concept of going against the grain and like choosing not to follow the crowd, but to like take the narrow road. And I think it's interesting because both of us have kind of been through that, but also like everything we've talked about in this podcast episode has had to do with that, where it's almost really like crazy, where it's almost like choosing to like really be yourself and stick to your gut and stay true to who you are and your sound, and surrounding yourself with the right people, and also like, you know, choosing to get out of the crowd when you need to, and to go your own way, even if it looks like you're going alone, to not follow these people into this toxic environment, or, you know, even if they are really professional people, you know. And it's cool because it's like, that's what the whole song is about.
It's something that I've always kind of known this about myself. And I think it's funny that your first impression of me was, you know, whenever we were in Costa Rica and people were kind of cliquey or whatever. And then I just like talked to you. I was like, hey, I'm Calla. What's up? Yeah. Like, I just kind of walked up to you. Is that, you know, I've never, even in high school was like a big part that I kind of realized this is I've never had like a friend group. Yeah. I've had friends, you know, and we kind of made like a little trio of us or whatever, but I've never had like a friend group. And I was in one for a sec, and why be in a group of people if all they're going to do is talk horribly about each other, you know? So I got out of that.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is
I'm not a cliquey person, and I know what it feels like to be excluded from those cliques. Yes. So whenever you were saying it, like that I just walked up to you and you were already kind of feeling like everybody was kind of standoffish, and I was just like, hey, what's up? Like I've always been that person, and I think it took a long time for me to be like, why don't I fit in with this group? What's wrong with me as to why don't, maybe I don't look a certain way, maybe I'm not skinny enough, maybe I'm not pretty enough, maybe I didn't do blah, 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 blah. I didn't go to this school or whatever it was. It was one of those things that I've always realized I'm going to go my own way, whether you like it or not. It's just who I am. And so like being bold and brave and confident, whether it's real confidence or you're just faking it till you make it, it's something that I know I can definitely relate to, and I know that you can relate to too. So I think it's awesome that, you know, that song that we created, it really was pulled from real places.
It was. And I think it's funny because when we went to Costa Rica, I remember like I knew people going into the trip, and you knew certain people going into the trip.
No, I didn't know anybody.
And you didn't know anyone?
No, I know a couple of the mentors.
Okay.
Just through like other mutual friends, but like I didn't know anything from anybody of any of these people. I didn't know. Maybe that's why I was all so close to my mom, because I was like, I didn't know any of these people.
Yeah. Like maybe it was like
but I knew a couple of the mentors.
Maybe it was some people you had met like when you first got there, because I remember talking to you, and I remember us talking about how there was like a whole group of people who ended up doing a song together. Yeah. And there were people in that group of people who I knew before going into the trip, who I had talked to for months, and none of them invited me to be a part of writing that song. And then you were like,
I was hanging out with some people. I didn't get invited either.
You were hanging out with some of those people, and you didn't get invited either. And like in some ways it felt like, well, this is interesting. Like I've been talking to these people for months, and they like for some reason didn't want me to be a part of this. Yeah. And I think you felt similarly, and then we ended up meeting each other. And it's like funny because I think that was supposed to happen. So because whenever everybody was out making their own music or doing the group music, whatever, you and I, that was the night that we were in your like little cabana room or whatever, and we were talking about God. It all happened because of that. So like I that's so weird. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I just thought of that, and I was like, whoa, because neither one of us were invited to be a part of that group setting that was happening. You have some exciting things that we can't talk about right now, but I will have you back on here eventually, and we'll talk about it when we can. But I'm very excited for you. Thank you. So stoked to get to be a part of celebrating you in like this next season that you're stepping into. It's going to be so awesome.
Well, I feel the same way about you, especially with our song that we did.
I'm too.
Kayla, I just know there's something that's going to happen with this song. It's a feeling that I have.
It's going to.
And you know what? When that happens, we're going to watch this podcast again and be like, look, we both knew it.
It's going to. So yes, this is a great way to kind of close this out. But for those of you who have not heard it, now that we've talked about it, we released a song together. It's called Against the Grain. Against the Grain. It's on all streaming platforms, anywhere you hear music. It's really amazing. It was such a fun song to make together. For me personally, I've done like a lot of songs. I put out a lot of songs in the past year that are in kind of like the rock genre. Mm-hmm. This was the first song that I did that was like an upbeat, driving, like Americana pop alternative rock vibe. Which I had always wanted to do something in that vibe. So when I got the sync brief for it and they were wanting that, I was like, yes. And then I was like, I am pulling Calla in on this. It's going to be like perfect for a collaboration. And it just like really came together and turned out to be an incredible song. It's probably like my favorite song I've put out this year.
It's one of my favorites. Like, I have friends that, because it's definitely different than the style that I release. And I've had friends that are like, oh my gosh, I love that song. And they're like, it's so different. I was like, I know. And like, even with my brother, I saw he commented on that. I told him, because he's been like really on his grind with working out. And I told him, I was like, hey, when you're running, play the song. Yeah. And I was like, whenever he came back, I was like, isn't it a good song to work out to? Because it's just like a motivating, hard hitting, like you want to do better type of vibe. Like, and you own who you are. And so it was funny because I was like, I literally texted him. I was like, I know you're running right now. Play the song.
I just love it so much. It's definitely my favorite song so far this year that I've been a part of and gotten to actually put out. Probably my favorite collaboration I've ever done.
It's definitely my favorite collaboration I've ever done.
So fun. I think too, just because like
it's with you.
It is with you. Yeah, it's with you, but it's also like in the rock genre, which like I think for me with you, it's like that's one of the first conversations we had with each other had to do with like rock music and like our love for rock music. And so for me, it feels so cool that we've now like put something out into the world that we made together that is like in that genre.
Well, and even as far as like with the cover art and stuff like that, like that's a photo that I've wanted to use, and I actually wanted to use it whenever I was doing pop rock
turned out
music.
Perfect for that song.
Exactly. And actually I love how you have like the red on all of your cover art, and so seeing that I was like, oh my gosh, it looks so cool.
It like fit, like when I made it red I was like, heck yeah.
And do you know why? It just worked. The song came together. The song just worked. The lyrics came together. Your production came together. Our ideas came together. We had a great time writing. We literally did it in like one weekend, and like just hung out over here, and like I laid on the floor, and we laughed a lot.
It was so
like,
fun.
We had so much fun. So yes, please go listen to Against the
Grain.
Go
listen to it. I'm
such a dope song.
So excited. I know, like I can't wait until that lands placement, and
gosh,
we get to like go out and celebrate together and be like, let's go.
I like, it's just a thing that I know is going to happen. So
it is going to happen.
Kind of excited already that it's going to happen.
I am so excited about that. But yes, go check it out. Go listen to it. Hopefully at some point we can maybe do a music video or something for it. That would be so cool.
That would be so cool.
But yes, we appreciate you guys so much for listening to us.
Yes.
I know this was a long conversation, but there's so much in here that is so valuable. I hope that even just like hearing our stories and our processes as friends in this industry has been really like eye-opening and helpful and inspiring for you. Even if you're not in the music industry, you're in like a different field of society. I hope that there are things that you can really pull and take from this to apply to your own life in whatever industry you're in to help you move forward when it comes to the people that you have around you. Like maybe you need to look around you and actually be like, okay, I need to take a look at the people that I have around me and like, are these great people for me to surround myself with? If they're not, like you actually might need to like really think about that.
Make some changes. And it's okay to make changes.
Yeah.
I hope that, or at least my hope that somebody takes away from this podcast is knowing like you are not alone if you feel like you doubt yourself. You are not alone if you feel unsure or uncertain about a certain thing that you're going through. We have all been there, especially like there's no blueprint for really, there's no blueprint for anybody.
We're all just figuring it out, man.
Yeah. Like there's a humility in it, and we have definitely made mistakes. We have learned from them. And I hope that somebody takes away that you are not alone. Be sure in who you are. And don't let anybody take you away from that.
Exactly. And if like you need to reach out to one of us or you have questions,
DM me.
like,
I respond to all of my DMs, so DM me.
Please like reach out to us. I will put like our social media information in the description for the podcast so you can reach out to us if you need to. Like we are here for you. That's a reason why I created this podcast, is to help people move forward and to be like a safe person for people if they have questions or need to like process some of this stuff out with, you know? And also just like going back to the people you have around you, like maybe you also need to think like, oh, have I been putting unrealistic expectations on like my family members or close friends who maybe aren't in the same industry as me and don't understand, you know, and maybe shift your needs and your expectations to the right people, you know, and
or to God.
Yeah, or to God. Or
He will
like,
always answer you.
Exactly. Or maybe you've been like kind of doing this by yourself and you need to actually take that next step of like putting yourself in an encouraging, supportive environment filled with other people who are in the same industry as you. We both kind of took those steps at points, you know, and
it's scary, but
it's very scary, but
it's worth it.
It is worth it. And it really is a game changer in helping you move forward. And so maybe that's a step that you need to take. But I would just, take an inventory of yourself and the people you have around you and see what steps you might need to take forward to have the right people around you as you move forward in pursuing the dreams in the industry that you're in. And also like a little bit of homework, maybe go make a dream board
or like
big. Put like some dry erase boards up around your house or your apartment, or like I did, put some giant poster paper on the wall and actually like write down some like attainable next step goals that you can take to like actually see your dreams become a reality, or even just writing down like big things that maybe they don't feel super attainable, but that you are believing.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, and sometimes like at first I was kind of not doing that because I felt silly.
I feel like we were doing the opposite thing, because you were like putting like the huge things, and I was kind of going like, I think I was doing more of the goal oriented like timeline. What can I do and when can I do it? And it was all like attainable stuff. And then I looked at you and I was like,
I'm like, I will own, or no, and all of them, I actually said like, instead of I will have, it's I have this. I won Best New Artist at the Grammys.
Yeah.
Do I have a song that's nominated? No. Have I had a song that's nominated? No. But will I? Yes. Yeah. And so saying like, I have a Grammy for Best New Artist. I own an Aston Martin because I want that car as a purchase because I think they're awesome.
Yeah.
I'm traveling to Bali. Like things like that, which I'm not traveling to Bali right now, but do you know what? It's going to happen. And so you need to start speaking highly of yourself and highly about the dreams that act like you've already accomplished them.
Actually taking that faith step of like writing things down and putting them out there that maybe you don't even fully believe will happen, but that you're like, this is something that like God would have to show up for this to happen, but I'm believing for it, and put those out there. And then also put down like your attainable next steps. Like, what are some realistic, practical steps I can take right now to like actually step further into this thing, you know? Because I think you have to have both of those things like hand in hand, you know? And so that's some good little like homework for you guys to take away from this, is to go and actually physically do something like that, because it could be really good for you. But like I said, to also kind of take an inventory of the people that are in your life that you're surrounding yourself with, and see if you need to make some changes, and actually like reach out to some people who can kind of motivate and help you forward in the dreams in the industry that you're pursuing, and get plugged into some communities, you know, with people that are safe spaces that you can like connect with and process things out with. Because I know for myself, like, it was so hard when I was doing it all on my own. And it was a massive game changer when I got plugged into a community with other people who were involved in the music industry. That's how I ended up meeting you. Like, it's like, that's how I ended up actually making real friends who were in the same thing as me, who now I can reach out to and be like, hey, like, I need help, or hey, I'm kind of like feeling discouraged, or hey, this, you know. And so take that next step, you know, if you need to actually get plugged in, even if you don't know anyone or it feels vulnerable. Like, that's how you'll end up meeting the right people, you know. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate you. We just appreciate you for taking the time. We hope you really enjoyed this, and we will see you next time on the next episode.
Yes. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.